everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Kristin, this is my booktube, and in today's video we're going to be doing a quarterly reading check-in. So this year I'm trying to be a little bit better about staying on top of my reading goals throughout the year so I don't have to rush in November and December to try to meet my reading goals. That's happened for the past like 3 or 4 years. I figured a good way to do that is to do quarterly check-ins in addition to monthly wrap-ups. Because in monthly wrap-ups, I mostly focus on reviewing the books that I read in that month. We do talk a little bit about my reading stats, but it's never in the context of my overall reading goal. I mostly just talk about things that pertain to the books that I read that month. And knock on wood, so far, I have done a pretty good job of staying on track with most of my reading goals. As of April 12th, I have read 14 books, which is 20% of the way to my goal of 50 books for the year. So I am pretty much right on track with making that goal. So in today's video, I wanted to go over my overall book stats so far for the year, my plans on keeping up with or catching up on some of my reading goals, and then I want to talk about my favorites and least favorites of the books that I have read so far this year. So in this video, we will be focusing on the books that I read from January to March. And let's just go ahead and dive on into talking about the stats of all of the books that I've read so far this year. So far I have finished 14 books, and that puts me right on track for hitting my goal of 50 books by the end of the year. Hopefully we can at least make it to 50, and then anything beyond that would be just icing on the cake at that point. I definitely can do it. I have read 60 books in a year before, just not while I've been doing YouTube as well, I believe. I did also set a page goal and an hour goal for this year as well. So I set my audiobook hour goal for 2025 at 500 hours. I have currently listened to 141.38 hours, which puts me just slightly ahead of pace by 0.28 hours, which is like about 15 minutes. So we're pretty much right on track for that one as well. And the only one that I am not on track for is, shocker, my page goal. That is the stat that I always struggle with, just because I'm a very busy person and it's hard for me to carve out time in my day to actually sit down and read. The goal that I set was 5,000 pages at the beginning of the year, and I've currently only read 507 pages. Which puts me at 10% of the way to my goal, and I am 904 pages behind schedule. So we're definitely gonna have to do some strategizing there. I do have a couple books that I am in the midst of reading. I have one physical book and one ebook that I have started but have not finished. And I think goal number 1 is going to be finishing both of those books. And then I really need to be better about carving out time to sit down and read. So that is the main thing that I need to focus on going into what we're going to call Q2, even though this isn't a business. This is just a very small YouTube channel. But you know, for my accounting brain, dividing the years into quarters seems like a good way to go about tackling my reading goals this year. Basically, a tale as old as time when it comes to this channel. I'm doing okay with keeping up with the general amount of books read, but I'm not hitting my page goal, so I need to put in a little more effort to make sure that I am at least getting close to hitting my page goal. I don't want to put the pressure on myself to completely catch up, because then it's going to take the joy out of reading for me, but I just need to be better about setting aside specific time to sit down and read. Audiobooks are just so easy because I am a multitasker, so I listen to them on walks, I listen to them on drives. There's just so many different ways that you can easily work in audiobooks to your daily life if you are a busy person that don't really work with physical reading. And that's also why I don't really believe in the whole like audiobooks aren't reading, because that's just kind of elitist, and it does like cut out a bunch of people who have reading disabilities or don't have time to read. They have kids. They don't really have a quiet space or like a lot of free time to themselves to be able to sit down and read. Being able to sit and read is a luxury. And that is why I am a believer that all reading is valid, and I don't really think it matters how you ingest the book, because that's the goal at the end of the day, right? To enjoy good books, to have that escapism into books with great writing that just completely take away all of your worries and frustrations and stress that you have in your day-to-day life so that you can decompress a little bit. And it also helps like open your mind, broaden your horizons. There are so many upsides when it comes to reading in general that like I personally just don't like to be gatekeepy about stuff like that. So there's my little rant about audiobooks counting as reading. And then the last stat on the top section of my StoryGraph just says that my average time to finish a book is 7 days. And I definitely think that is heavily skewed because I had like a mini reading slump in February. I think I was mostly just really busy with work and stuff like that, that reading was really put to the back burner in that month, because I don't think I finished a book in February until like the last 3 days of the month. So I really drug my feet with the books that I was reading in February, and that definitely had an effect on this average time to finish a book. The moods for the books that I have read so far in 2025 are not really going to be a surprise to anyone that is familiar with my channel. They are pretty much the same as they always are. I am still a thriller girly. I have read other genres this year, but thrillers are still my favorite. Thrillers are still what make up most of the books that I have read, and that is definitely reflected in the moods of the books. So the top 3 moods of the books that I've read so far this year are mysterious, dark, and tense. Then we have emotional, lighthearted, funny, sad, and challenging. As far as the pace of the books that I've read so far go, they are mostly medium-paced books, about 86%, and then 14% fast-paced books. For the audiobook length, 8% were under 8 hours long, and then 92% were between 8 hours and 15 hours and 59 minutes. For the genres of the books that I've read so far this year, I have read 10 books that are under the thriller umbrella, about 8 that fall in the mystery category, 4 that fall in contemporary, 2 that are romance, 2 that are historical, 2 that are crime, and then 1 in the categories of classics, literary, and horror. So, like I just said, I am still very much a thriller girly, and that is reflected in these numbers for sure. As far as the format of the books, and this is the stat that we are trying to change over the next couple months, 93% of the books that I have read so far have been audiobooks, and 7% have been print. So we're going to definitely try to get those print numbers up over the next couple months. At least that's what I would like to do. We'll see if it actually works out. We'll have to check back in July and see if I actually do some more physical reading and get a little closer to being on track with that goal. Because the last thing I want is to get to like October and I still have 4,000 pages left to read to be able to hit that goal. That's not feasible, that's not doable, and I want to try to get ahead of that before it gets to that point. My most read authors are Alice Feeney, Lucy Foley, and Riley Sager. I have read 3 Alice Feeney books so far this year, 2 Lucy Foley books, and 2 Riley Sager books. And then this graph is interesting because you can really see where I absolutely fell off reading physical books because it is represented by the red line, and it just takes a nosedive after January. There is like a little blip in March because I think I read like 30 pages of the physical book that I have on my nightstand, but nothing really sizable to be able to compare with the other stats on this graph. So we really want to get that red line just a little bit closer to those other ones so that you can actually kind of see how many pages I've been reading. But like I said, we will have to check back in July and see if I'm actually able to do that. And then lastly, we have the rating distribution graph. So the average star rating of the 14 books that I've read so far is a 3.95, which like isn't that bad. And even while I was going through this and looking over the books that I rated the highest versus the books that I rated the lowest, there aren't really any bad books that I've read so far this year. So that is a win in itself, honestly, because nothing puts me in a reading slump faster than reading a bad book. especially with thrillers, if the twists are bad or if I see them coming from miles away, those are just things that like kind of take me out of reading it a little bit, I guess. And I haven't really had too many of those so far, or at least if the twists were obvious, the story itself was interesting enough and done well enough to carry the rest of the book for me to still think that it was a decent book. So as you can see, the lowest rating that I've given so far this year is a 3-star. And I know for some people, a 3-star is like, that is not a good book. But for me personally, the way that I do my ratings is 3 is just, it's average. It is a book. I'm not surprised it got published, but it's not anything particularly special. It's not something that I'm going to really remember. Or if it's from an author that I've read before, I just know that they can do so much more than what was in that particular book. We have had mostly 4-star and above as far as ratings go. So even from that stat alone, you can really tell that like I've enjoyed the books that I've read so far this year. I don't really feel like I'm in much of a reading slump, which is partly because I'm getting back into reading The Hunger Games, and that always pulls me out of a reading slump. I do have books like waiting in the wings for when I inevitably read a book that puts me in a reading slump. But in my mind, those books are stored behind one of those like glass panes that says like break in case of an emergency. So they are in the reserves, if you will, to hopefully help pull me out of a reading slump if that does happen. So now I want to talk just a little bit about my top 3 and bottom 3 books so far in 2025. And we'll start with the bottom 3. So my least favorite book that I've read so far this year was Listen for the Lie. I didn't really have much issue with the story itself. I just found the main character quite unlikable. At least I didn't like her much. And her inner monologue did nothing to make me like her because most of the book she spent thinking about killing people, even though she's supposedly not the murderer. I just didn't particularly like that choice. I thought it was a little off-putting and made me question how many people just walk around thinking about killing people, because that's not something I've ever thought of when talking to someone. I've never just visualized murdering them, but now I'm kind of worried that more people do that than I think. I don't know, but it was a weird inner monologue and I did not really enjoy that part, but overall the story was done well. I enjoyed like the writing style, and I enjoyed like the podcast bits and stuff like that were weaved in throughout the book, but I just really did not like the main character. So that's why I rated it 3 stars. It's not a bad book. It's fine, but I don't think that I will ever reread it. I don't know that I will really recommend it to anyone, but nonetheless, it is a book that I read. Next on the list of my least favorite books so far this year is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney, and this one kind of hurt to put at 3 stars just because I love Alice Feeney. I mean, clearly she's the author that I've read the most of so far this year, and I have really enjoyed all of her books, but this one just didn't hit for me. I just know that she can do so much better. Like, I'm pretty sure literally every other book that I've read of hers was better than this one. If you want an Alice Feeney book, go read Rock, Paper, Scissors or Daisy Darker or His and Hers. She has so many other really good thrillers, and she is really good with twists. And this twist was okay, I guess, but it was just such a slow burn thriller that it really didn't end up feeling that thrilling. I was just mostly confused for a lot of the book. And there wasn't really a point where I felt like the adrenaline rush that I normally feel when a thriller is like actually gripping and suspenseful. So overall, I just know that she can do better than this, and it just sucks because I was very excited about this book because I've been saying for a couple years that Alice Feeney's books have just, in my opinion, gotten better the more that she's put out. And then this book did not follow that pattern. It was not as good as pretty much any of the books of hers that I've read. Overall, I still think it was a decent story. It was mysterious, and there were some creepy moments, but there wasn't really ever a point where I was actually feeling that psychological thriller kind of feeling that I normally get with an Alice Feeney book. Then the last book on my least favorite books that I've read so far is The Paris Apartment. It's also just really interesting that 2 of the authors that I've read the most of this year are both in my bottom 3 rated books. But kind of similarly, I just have read better books by Lucy Foley. I actually reread The Guest List after I finished this book. It had been a couple years since I read the guest list, and though I was pretty sure that even just from my vague memory of it, that it was better than The Paris Apartment, I still reread it anyway, just to kind of be sure, I guess. And I do enjoy doing rereads like that when they're books that I really enjoyed. And yeah, I just think that the guest list is better, The Hunting Party is better. This one, once again, was only like mildly thrilling. I wouldn't really even want to call Beautiful Ugly or The Paris Apartment thrillers because there was not really a moment where it was particularly thrilling. So it kind of defeats the purpose of calling them thrillers if they're not really thrilling. So yeah, those are my bottom 3 rated books. And then my top 3 books so far in 2025 are Funny Story by Emily Henry. I thought this one was really cute. It's a fake dating trope, but the twist on the fake dating trope is that our 2 love interests were both dumped by their partners, so their partners could date each other. And when they get invitations to their wedding, they decide to pretend that they're dating. And that's where the whole story starts off. And I really enjoyed that book. I liked the main character a lot. I liked the love interest a lot. I thought that the story was well done. I enjoy Emily Henry romances, so this one was up there with some of the other ones of hers that I've read, if not above most of them. I think I still had Book Lovers rated higher, but it may have been a close second. I don't remember exactly what I rated Book Lovers, but I do remember it being up there with that one. But overall, a super cute story and on par with other Emily Henry books that I have loved in the past. Next on my favorite books that I've read so far this year is The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and this is my favorite thriller so far this year. The other 2 books on this list are not in the thriller genre. This is the only one that made the top 3, and for good reason. This is my favorite Riley Sager book that he has ever put out. And I was kind of justified in that opinion because in my workbook club, we did a drawing for our April book where everyone brought in a title that they wanted to suggest to the club. Then we put them all in a little jar and drew them out one by one until, funny enough, there was only one left. And then that was the book for the next month. Another guy in the book club and I both put in The Only One Left by Riley Sager. So that just validates me in the way that I feel about this book because I really loved this book. I can't wait to go back and reread it already. I'm not kidding when I tell you, like, in February, I was wanting to read it again. I'm stopping myself from doing that just because it feels weird to put the same book twice on your reading challenge, even if you do actually read it twice. It just feels weird to have it counted twice like that. So I gotta wait until at least January of next year to read it again, but I will definitely be reading it again and I will be recommending it to other people. I think it is such a great story. I think it hits the right combination of like psychological thriller with mystery elements and some historical elements. And the narratives are all so intertwined in a way that really adds to the mystery. And I just thought it was such a good book. I think it's Riley Sager's best book, in my opinion. And it is a thriller that I will be recommending to other people anytime they ask me for a good thriller recommendation. And then last but not least, the highest rated book that I have read so far in 2025 is The Women by Kristin Hannah. And this was a pick for my workbook club, and it has been highly recommended to me since it came out last year. I feel like it's been out for longer than that just because of all of the buzz that I've heard about it, both online and just from people I know in real life. And it definitely lived up to the hype. I have read Kristin Hannah books before, and she does do a great job with her historical fiction work, in my opinion. And The Women is no exception to that. I really loved this book, and it got me on an emotional roller coaster in a lot of different ways. Not only just in terms of like happy moments and sad moments, but it also invoked frustration and anger in me. Both frustration with the main character and the choices that she was making, and also frustration and anger for like the actual things that were happening to her, whether that be people ignoring her when she's trying to get help or the bad decisions that she makes to self-medicate. All of those things had me on the wildest roller coaster of emotions, both with ups and downs and twists and turns and corkscrews and all of that stuff going upside down. I was everywhere when reading this book, and And this was also one of the books that took me the longest to finish, because when I would get frustrated with the main character Frankie, or with whatever situation was happening, or if something really emotional happened, I would just have to like stop listening for a little bit and kind of give myself a little bit of breathing room to, I guess, process the emotions before jumping back into finishing the book. So this one took me a while to finish for that reason. But even though there were moments that frustrated me, and even though it was an emotional roller coaster ride, that is the intention of the book, I feel. It's meant to invoke emotion within you for these historical events by placing these main characters right in the thick of whatever is happening. Like in this instance, it's the Vietnam War. And it definitely accomplished that goal with me. It had me so emotionally invested, and by the end, I was in tears. Even though silly me with like an hour left of this audiobook was like, I'm not gonna cry. Like, I can totally make it through the rest of this book without crying. Lo and behold, like 10 minutes later, I was actively sobbing at my kitchen table. So I feel like with a story like that, if it is able to evoke that kind of emotional response from me to where I am so invested in this book that I am actually getting angry and frustrated and sad and crying and having all of these emotions as if these characters were people that I actually knew in real life, there's no way I could give it anything other than a 5-star. I think that Kristin Hannah has a beautiful writing style. I really love reading her historical fiction, and I have a couple of her books on my bookshelf behind me. So she's definitely someone that I will continue reading, and I do recommend her books to other people on the regular. I've recommended The Nightingale to so many people. I've run into people reading it like on an airplane, and we've had conversations about it. Her books are just that good, in my opinion. And The Women is not an exception to that. As a matter of fact, it is the best Kristin Hannah book that I've read so far, and I can't wait to read some more of her books. All right, so those are my top 3 and bottom 3 books that I have read so far in 2025. Like I said, I enjoyed all of these books. There's not really any that are bad. So that's why I hesitate to call it like the best and the worst of 2025, because even the lowest rated ones are not ones that I would call bad books. They're still decent books. I've just read so much better. And speaking of reading so much better, I am currently in the thick of rereading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and I will quickly be moving on to Sunrise on the Reaping, and I already feel like I am going down the Hunger Games rabbit hole yet again, because as I'm reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I'm just thinking about what Sunrise on the Reaping is gonna hold. This is gonna be my little like Hunger Games aside, I guess. So if you're not into the Hunger Games, if you're not interested in me talking about Sunrise on the Reaping or The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, you can go ahead and skip this part, I guess. But I am really enjoying my reread so far of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's really gearing me up to read Sunrise on the Reaping, because I'm already trying to piece together what is going to be in Sunrise on the Reaping between the things that I know about Haymitch from the original trilogy and the things that I know about the Hunger Games from what happens in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I'm like trying to start to fill in those gaps a little bit myself, but it's just getting me very excited to dive into Sunrise on the Reaping and get more information on how the Hunger Games went from the way they were in the 10th Hunger Games to how they are in the 50th Hunger Games when Haymitch enters the arena. Just from the little bit that I know about Haymitch's games, there's so much that happens between those 2 points in that 40 years. And we know that President Snow has a direct hand in all of it. So I'm very excited to dive into that. And I feel like I'm gonna inevitably end up making a Hunger Games like crash course lore video because of how much I've read all of these books. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and let me know, I guess. I already felt like a crazy person when I reread the Hunger Games last year with the context of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I can't even imagine what I'm gonna be like when I finish Sunrise on the Reaping. So I will be sure to document that descent into madness for you all to enjoy in the future. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this little quarterly catch up. It feels so formal and businessy to say that. It just feels weird. But it is a quarter of the year already, so I wanted to go ahead and just do an update because I really want to keep up a good pace throughout this year to hit my reading goals, so I'm not scrambling at the last minute to try to reach them. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below. Let me know. You should also subscribe while you're down there because I put out new videos pretty much every single week. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!